Okay, well, we are in Genesis 1, and we'll see if we can get through days 2 and 3 of creation today. Oh, you're back on. Nope, turn that microphone back. Okay, now we're in Genesis 1, and we'll see if we can get through days 2 and 3 of creation today. We're starting at verse 6. God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters. Let it separate the water from the water." God made the expanse. He separated the water that was below the expanse from the water that was above the expanse. And it was so. God called the expanse sky. There was evening and there was morning the second day. You see if you have the EHV in the footnote or the heavens. When you think of heavens, well, we'll get to that when we get there. So, see Exodus 39:3 and Isaiah 40:19. For times this same word is rakia. The same word for expanse is used. Maybe a bit of a clue what went on here in day 2. Kind of interesting. Not talking about the sky, but talking about the word for sky, this rakia. Creation must have just been an amazing feat to witness. Exodus 39:3, someone have that one? Fred has that, okay. If it's the one I'm thinking of, it will in a second.
Okay. They beat the gold into thin sheets and cut it into threads so that they could work it into the blue, purple, and scarlet material and into the fine linen, the work of a skilled craftsman.
Yeah. So that's the word for rakia is taken, the word of rakia there is taking the gold and hammering it out and then spreading it over to, so kind of like making an expanse, right? You're sort of, you covering something basically, covering it with gold. And then Isaiah 40:19. Lynn Seifert has that.
As for an idol, a craftsman casts it, and a goldsmith overlays it with gold, and fashions silver chains for it.
Yeah, the word, you can guess there, the word overlay, right, is this word for expanse or rakia. So let there be an expanse between the waters. Let it separate the water from the water. God made the rakia, he made the expanse. Now, as we're talking about that, thinking about that, as you go to 1:14 through 17 and 1:20, so we just skip ahead a few verses. What does he put in the expanse? To kind of show you, okay, what is the expanse we're talking about? How about 14 through 17?
I got that.
Okay.
God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to divide the day from the night, and let them serve as markers to indicate seasons, days, and years. Let them serve as lights in the expanse of the sky to give light to the earth," and it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He also made the stars. God set these lights in place in the expanse of the sky to provide light for the earth.
So when you think of the expanse there, what do you think of as you're looking up?
The parts we can see.
Yeah, and specifically, like the way up there parts, right? The sun and the moon and this, you go out at night and you say, oh, that stuff is, I can see it, but it's really far away, right? That's sort of the, up there in the, whatever you want to call it, the universe or beyond where you need to take a space shuttle to go. Now, 20, read that. Who's got that one? Karen?
And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky."
Yeah, so when you think about that, you're not thinking of like where Jupiter is, but you're just thinking, yeah, look up and there's birds flying around, right? So remember last week we talked about this idea of like 3 heavens. I remember what the 3 heavens were. The third heaven Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians. So the first heaven was what you just read. You look up and you see birds and clouds. And the second heaven was what you read, Lisa. That's where the sun and moon and stars are. And then the third heaven is where God dwells. Like that's above even where the sun, moon, and stars are. So all of that is included in this rakia, right? He made the expanse. Look up, and that's what God created. So I think that's probably the easy part of this section. I think, unless you have any questions on that. Now we have a sky. Now we can look up and see where before you didn't have that. It was just water. Now separating water from water maybe is a little more difficult. How do you visualize the water above the expanse? Let there be an expanse between the waters. Let us separate water from water. Which already tells you what. Up in that expanse, there's water. Yeah. God made the expanse. He separated water that was below the expanse from water. Now here this part. Water that was above the expanse, above the rakia.
I always thought that was clouds because they contain water, but they're in the expanse.
So it almost,
It seems like
they're in the
more
expanse,
above
aren't
that,
they? Yeah, and so are the sun, moon, and stars are in the expanse.
Right.
He put water above the expanse.
Isn't there like a theory that people can't get too far because there's a layer of water surrounding
Yeah,
the
some of,
area
yep,
and
yep.
stuff like that would be almost like something like this would almost like support someone's
Support
theory of
something like
it
that,
that there's actually like a layer of water out in space and we just haven't ever gotten to that
Right.
spot.
This would be the proof passage for a flat earth theory.
Yeah, well, yeah. So Ken Ham and Answer Like Creation Museum, stuff like that, I believe that's kind of where they go with it, that there is, beyond what we can see, eventually you would get to the water above the rakia, the water above the expanse. It's kind of so I've always look at chapter 2, verse 5. 5 and 6, yeah. As far as like rain, read chapter 2, 5 and 6. You got it, Abigail? Go ahead.
No bushes that grow on the field were yet on the earth, and no plants of the field had yet sprung up, since the Lord God had not yet caused it to rain on the earth. There was not yet a man to till the soil, but water came up from the earth, and watered the entire surface of the ground.
So, in God's perfect creation, Garden of Eden, how did he keep things hydrated versus today? Yeah, it came from below rather than from above, right? No rain had come on the earth, and someone make the argument, perhaps no rain came on the earth until the flood. That was the first time that rain happened. That just, God had a way of watering it from also think of like the Nile River. You ever see a picture of like the Nile River in Egypt? Look at the Nile River, how it looks on a map compared to everything around it in Egypt. It's this beautiful green, lush, the Nile River Delta in that valley is just, it stands out like a sore thumb when you look at a satellite. Everything around it is brown and desert, and that's where the sphinxes are and the pyramids and all that, but the Nile River is just beautiful. God made water come. It doesn't need rain for the Nile River Delta to look like the Nile River Delta, right? Water from the earth is doing that, from below, so to speak, rather than from above. So here too, we've talked about this. Perhaps was this water above the expanse kind of like a vapor canopy? That's the next thought there. Was it but then that is kind of weird because is that above the sun then? And then what's the purpose of it? I get it if it was below the sun and it was like a perfect greenhouse almost, like the earth was a greenhouse and everything was right climate controlled temperature and you didn't need rain and you had water from below and the sun's rays weren't going to harm anything. But then when you think about the water being above the rakia, what would the purpose of that canopy be? So as where God stretches out, what would the purpose of that be?
There is no purpose.
Well, and that's maybe back to our lesson last week, right? There's some questions that God just tells us how it was, but doesn't really give us answers as to why. We do know everything in here is meant to talk about our salvation and the story of our salvation and why God did things, or how God did things the way he did. And, so was this water above the rakia, how the flood became as drastic as it did in such a short period of time? Some have suggested that. Like, how in the world can you get that much water to cover the mountains in 40 days? Unless there is some giant source of water that suddenly flows all at once onto the earth. So Hawaii, the hurricane's going through Ilala, I think, or Lolo, and there's areas that have got like 50 inches of rain already up in the mountains. And I have a secret, the mountains still look like the mountains, right? It's gonna take a whole lot more than 50 inches of rain to cover the mountains. It's gonna take an obscene amount of rain. Will never happen unless you have a source of it that is just beyond what we've ever seen or heard before. So was that kind of what happened when the flood happened? Was it this separating the water from the water, this above the Rakia water? God said, okay, and he put the pin in it and it just went, I don't know.
Saved for that purpose.
Yeah, was that the, ultimately he knew that's what he was gonna use to judge the world.
They could do anyone you wanted.
And again, maybe it's not a question worth, you're not gonna lose your faith over it type thing, but it's kind of, it's kind of interesting. What did the original world look like before the fall and the flood versus after? To me, that makes sense that would be an immense source of water that could cause even because when it was just water, everything was covered. And then he separates, and now you can, this next day, you're gonna see dry ground. Well, he just kind of started over again. And we're gonna go back to square one and make it all water, just like it was at the beginning. Until the water recedes, and now you see mountain tops and things like that again. So, in my brain, that kind of makes sense.
I would take it that the water, when it receded from the flood, then receded elsewhere, it didn't go back up.
It didn't go back up, right? Yeah, so then you would say this was just kind of a temporary thing and it's not there anymore. Which that would kind of go against what Adriana said, but who's going to prove that there's water at the end of the universe, right? I'm not going out there. I don't think we have the technology to get out there. Well, we've reached the end of the universe. Here's this water canopy. I don't know. Trivia, how far have we been able to go how far can we see into space? I mean, it's a ridiculously long, and it's just getting better. I'm sure every year we have better technology where we can, and I don't think anyone's ever said, it looks like that's the end. It looks like we've gotten to the point where we can see sort of that's the limit of how far the universe goes. What else? Anything else on 6, 7, 8?
You know, there's a lot less life in the sea after Darren gets done fishing.
Yeah. And on the earth during Thanksgiving week, right? Okay, so remember day one, our little finger trick. Day one, the let there be light, like blowing out a candle. Day two is the cut. Now we're going to separate water from water. We're going to make the sky and the water below versus the water above. Well, now what happens? God said, verse 9, let the waters under the sky be gathered to one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. The waters under the sky gathered to their own places, and the dry land appeared. God called the dry ground land, and the gathering places of the waters he called seas. God saw that it was good. We'll pause there. If you're paying really close attention, you notice he doesn't say it was good after day 2. He says it was good in the middle of day 3. Every other day he says it at the end of the day. It was good, but here, well, why do you think that might be? And he doesn't say it was good until the middle of day 3.
It wasn't quite finished.
Wasn't quite finished yet, makes sense. Yep, we separated water from water, but now I still got some tinkering to do with the water here to make the dry ground and the seas appear. When I'm done with that, done working with the water, then I'll say it was good.
So why does the Hebrew not say that they went to their own places, but the Greek does? At least that's what the footnote says.
Yeah.
Even the comparison to the KJV up there, the verse is much shorter of verse 9 than the EHV.
Can you pull up I suppose you can. Pull up the Septuagint now. Can you pull up the Septuagint, it would be called, the Genesis 1 or the LXX, Septuagint or LXX?
Oh, what's it, what language is that?
It'd be in Greek. Septuagint.
LXX. One of these.
What I really need is I need the LXX and then I need the, does that Hebrew you have pulled up have like the notes? No, that's not gonna help me. I brought my Hebrew Bible. So, as you're looking for that, it's kind of like, Lisa, when you look in the, it'll have in the New Testament too, it'll say in the footnotes, some manuscripts say, and then it'll have like a, and then you have to ask the question, okay, which manuscripts say it? And the questions you ask are, how widespread were those manuscripts? How early were those manuscripts? Those are usually the two sort of evidences. If it's only a manuscript like from one part of the world and none of the other manuscripts say it, you're going to kind of doubt that manuscript. And if it's a manuscript that came along later and all the earlier ones don't have it, you're probably going to kind of doubt that manuscript too. So,
What appear to be variants of the LXX.
yeah, that's all right. I just have never worked with this, so I don't know what anything is. That's the short answer to your question, Lisa. Maybe next week I can bring my Hebrew Bible along. But I'm guessing it's going to be one of those some manuscripts say type thing. Okay. What was my question? Oh, yeah, so the water is moving around. Talk to me about the power of water from your experience. Have you had experience where water and the force of water and the power of water has really done some damage or done some things that make you go, wow, I didn't realize water had that much?
Right, during, years back, when it rained so much, Highway 40 just slid off the side.
Yeah, was that Tennessee or North
Water was rushing so bad
Carolina?
from the rivers, it just cut the side of the mountain, the highway just disappeared.
Yeah, concrete, asphalt, gone. Is that the same one where there's some towns like the before and after picture?
Asheville.
Yeah, here's downtown before, Main Street after it's gone. Like the buildings are gone, everything's gone, the trees are gone. And that was what, 20, 30 inches of water? That wasn't thousands of feet of water. That was bad, but not like moving a sea from here to there.
My brother-in-law and sister-in-law live in, Mississippi.
Okay.
Way down below. And, when the hurricane came through,
Yeah,
it wiped out, that water wiped out the whole downtown. The only thing left standing was the Golden Arch.
yeah,
That was it. The rest of it was gone completely.
yeah. And that was what, a foot of water, maybe 2 feet? I mean,
Yeah, well, I don't know what it was, probably 2 feet of water.
doesn't take much.
No.
Doesn't take much for catastrophic damage. So now think about, you have an earth that's covered with water, and God goes kind of like this in my brain, right? So we take a bunch of water and so hundreds of thousands of feet of water, and we move it all to one place. Now we're going to have ocean versus dry ground. What do you think the effect on what is underneath that water is going to be when the force of thousands of feet of water?
You would think it would level it off,
Yeah,
but it doesn't.
but it doesn't. At the very least, does that help maybe some of these when the science book will say, well, this thing must be billions of years old because look at the structure and the lines and how can the Grand Canyon just form from? I'll tell you how.
Yeah.
If you have thousands of feet of water, twice, here and the flood, I'll tell you how that can happen.
And it's not like it went away with the snap of his finger.
Right,
It had to decrease,
right.
so.
And that's a
To me,
process
that's the
too.
lines.
Yeah. Someone want to look up Psalm 104. Psalm 104 is kind of a cool psalm. It's sort of the creation story in a psalm, basically. Psalm 104, 7 through 9. Yeah, they just started 5 through 9. Well, before we get there, so from the psalm, some people suggest, if you look at day 2, the sky, verse 4, some suggest, is this a hint of when the angels were created? So look at 3 and 4. He lays beams on the waters to support his upper chambers. He makes clouds his chariot. He travels on the wings of the wind. He makes his messengers winds. His ministers are blazing fire. And guess what the word for messenger is in the Bible? Angels, right? He makes angels. So if Psalm 104 is talking about the story of creation, is day 2 from here, the day that God created the angels. That would be kind of the only, if you want to have a proof passage, right? Maybe. Well, we know they're created beings. We can say that for sure. They are not eternal the way God is eternal. But okay. Anyway, 5 through 9. Lynn Hermanson.
He placed the earth firmly on its foundations. It cannot be moved forever and ever. You covered it with the deep as a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. At your rebuke they fled. At the sound of your thunder they hurried away. The waters surged up the mountains. They went down into the valleys to the place that you prepared for them. You set a boundary that they cannot cross. They will not return to cover the earth.
Okay. Yeah, so the question, what tremendous geological implications do you see resulting from the waters be gathered and dry land appear?
Sounds like to me that God moved the waters by pushing the land up.
Or what was the chicken or the egg type thing? But yeah,
So that creates the geological formations that we see
Right.
today.
right.
God just made it happen.
Pull up while you're, I don't know if you found what you were looking for,
I think
but
so, but
just look at go to Google or whatever, some browser, and pull up a view of the Hawaiian Islands underwater, I think is the way to, this always kind of, while you're on Hawaiian Airlines, we can book a flight. Put in that'd be fine, yeah.
Can all go? Yeah.
Yeah, that second one maybe is the. So, can you do what you can to blow that up. So when you think of Hawaii, that's what you think of, right? You think of the state of Hawaii, you see it on a map, and it's got here's the big island in Maui and Oahu and Kauai. That one though, yeah, I always struggle with women's Bible study too. I don't know how to make that like screen size.
Can you just control
well,
and then?
we're gonna not use Bing for one thing.
Well, that'll do it too.
Okay, yeah, so.
Better.
That might be as good as we can do. So what you see on the right, when you see a map of Hawaii, you see what's above the water there, right? There's the big island, there's Maui. I think that is it's interesting to see. Here's what it looks like below the water, just how ginormous those mountains, islands are. And I guess it makes sense. I think as a kid, maybe you think, oh, it's kind of standing there on the water, and you don't think that you go, it's got to be standing on something. So you go underneath it, it just keeps going down and down and down.
Glacier.
So, yeah, when God, he pushes the water, or whether it's the dry ground came up and the water went away, or kind of both at the same time, now you have what you see. So then the other thing when it comes to this is it Pangea it's called? Remember, have you heard that term?
Yeah.
What's Pangea?
all the continents were one clump. Is what the-
Pull that up, yeah.
Way ahead of you, boys.
All right. So you look at it and you say, yeah, you know, it kind of does look like South America should fit into Africa. Now some of them are a little more of a stretch when you wonder how they would fit, but that too, you know, was there at one time, this is what dry ground looked like on day 3 of creation. And then whether it was the flood or just over the course of time, because stuff is always going on in the plates and things underway, there's constantly activity. That's another interesting, we don't have to do it now, but it's at the National Geological, like it gives you earthquake, yeah, there's like earthquakes happening constantly. Now, some are the bad ones you hear about, but there is always tremors and activity. And so over the course of time, and the flood certainly would be a powerful enough event to separate some of these land masses from each other with all that water, 30,000 feet of water. Anyway, so.
Then at some level, they're all connected on way down underneath,
Right,
right?
right.
Like Hawaii.
Yeah, eventually you get down to like the tectonic plates and you go down to the magma and you get down to the middle of the earth eventually, right? You keep going down, down, down. So, any thoughts on that? Or? It doesn't answer all our questions, but makes you think a little bit. I wonder what it would have.
I remember being taught about Pangea in elementary school and thinking, what planet were they, what were they taking that day when they figured that out? Because it didn't look like anything to me.
All right, well, and so you have the dry ground versus the water. Is it the dry ground as we think about it today when you look at a globe versus the water, or was it more of a one unit of dry ground versus the water, and then over time you have the dry ground that we see today? I tend to think more of that. Yeah. Between the flood and time, you get what we have today.
So they talk about where, like, the west coast is like going down into the ocean.
Falling off into the ocean.
Yeah, it's like.
That could
they're losing
eventually
land
happen, yeah.
there. Well, that's just your shifting that
It's right, constantly,
pretty
yeah.
much, there are plenty of earthquakes out there, so.
Right. All right, now the second part of his activity on the third day, God said, let the earth produce plants, vegetation that produces seed, and trees that bear fruit with its seed in it, each according to its own kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth plants, vegetation that produces seed according to its own kind, and trees that bear fruit with its seed in it, each according to its own kind. And God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning the third day. So there's the second phase of his activity, right? We are now, you got to put something on this dry ground that you've created. Go ahead, Mary.
What about with the carbon-13, like the trees in California?
Yeah.
And, they say, oh, they were, they're 30 million years old or whatever.
Yeah. Do you know anything about that? The whole
Well, we learned some stuff when we went to the Ken Ham exhibit.
which is worth the time if you're ever down
And
there.
then I've read stuff about it since too, is a lot of the dating systems are based on that atoms decay at a regular rate, so carbon will decay at a certain rate.
Yeah.
And it's continuous and the same all the time. Well, it's been disproven. They found that there's changes in the rate of decay in these atoms, but the regular scientific community, if you will, is choosing to ignore that
Well,
because it doesn't fit their narrative. But it's been shown that there's this change in decay. So we can't say, well, that's 13 million years old. It might only be 1,000, something that fits more into the Genesis account.
I remember reading something that the coast of Florida aged by several 100,000 years after Hurricane Hugo, like before and after,
Yeah.
because the pounding it took. So
Wow.
imagine what a worldwide flood would do.
I did have one pastor say to me, if God wanted to create a tree that was 30 million years old, I mean, he could do what he wants.
Or it looks like it's
It
there,
didn't-
yeah.
He didn't plant a seed, he actually put trees,
Right.
Yeah,
so if he
so there's
wants
nothing
them
to say
be
that the tree
that
wasn't 100 years old
Yeah.
when he first put it
Right.
there.
Right. Look like 100 years.
Yeah, and I think that point you made about the scientific community just won't accept things that go against the narrative, even if you can prove it. Well, we just won't tell you that part. right?
Yeah.
Conveniently keep that part out. And we'll get to that, I think, on this next page too, when we talk about our buddy Gregor Mendel and some of his genetic stuff that he found.
So BGT is the English translation of the LXX,
Oh, okay.
and LXE is the Greek.
No.
So that's what I'm told. Or BGT, yeah, so BG, yeah, this is supposed to be the LXX, and this is supposed to be the English translation of it.
And what was the issue there? The
I
Greek
don't-
that includes the sentence that happened.
You set me up to do something and I just went and did it.
So it kind of repeats itself in
Yeah,
those brackets, but it said that Hebrew doesn't have it, but Greek does.
right. So otherwise we got, that's okay. Oh, it's that second, yeah,
The
so.
second part of
The
nine.
second part is just saying the same thing the first part said.
Yeah, it kind of repeats
So
it.
it just sort of is repetitive, yeah. So then you ask, why would they do that? Why would the people who translated the Old Testament from Hebrew into Greek, why would they just repeat the same thing? Which, I don't know. I guess I've never thought about that. Because what is added there, it just basically says it happened the way he said it was gonna happen.
So the Greek was second, so the Greek
Yes,
decided
much later,
to
much later.
add.
Yeah, so
something that
Moses would
wasn't
have.
originally there.
Right.
What's the difference?
I wonder if they do it, as you read Genesis 1, there's this kind of consistent, so look at verse, well, what we just read,
Well, I
11.
was just gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, let the earth produce plants, and then 12, the earth brought forth plants. Let there be lights, and then verse 16, God made the two great lights. So I wonder if they're they have good intentions, trying to keep it consistent, where God said, let there be, and then it happened. Where the Hebrew in 9 just says, God said, let it happen. And it was so. Yeah, I wonder if that's kind of what they were doing
Yeah, he didn't follow the rest.
to keep it consistent, yeah. What are the two classifications Moses divides the vegetation God created into? What's that?
Shrubs and trees.
Okay, yeah, so seed-bearing plants, right? And then fruit trees bearing fruit with seed.
Plants to look at, plants to eat.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, plants to look at, plants to eat. What unique power did the Creator endow? With what unique power did he endow the first specimens?
They can create its own, or reproduce its
To
own.
reproduce for itself, yeah, after their own kind, to bear seed. Through God's powerful word, life creates life. He doesn't have to keep doing it. Now he's kind of started it, and now it can keep reproducing for itself. So turn the page. Here's where I asked Fred at the beginning if he could help me with this too. I am by no means a genetic scholar, but this would be a time to talk about evolution and evolutionary theory and, how can something eventually, something that has one source, right? So the primordial ooze, or whatever you want to call it, become dog and cat and bear and fruit. And how can one thing become all these different things that you see today? Versus Genesis, which to me makes more sense. He created this according to its kind, and this according to its kind, and this according to its kind, and this according to its kind. took a picture of a quote I found. Pull it up. So this is our friend AI, but I thought it did a good job. 2 perspectives on genetic boundaries. So the creationist would say this perspective views the inability to cross biological boundaries as proof of a fixed original creation. It argues that the genetic code of a canine kind was pre-programmed with a high amount of built-in variety, allowing for foxes, wolves, and dingoes, but containing absolute genetic walls that prevent any transition beyond that family. So is it a dog has like 78 chromosomes and a cat has 39 or something like they are specific, this cannot be this. They have specific kind of boxes. Now, my dog looks a lot like a fox. Somewhere along the line, they have the same building blocks in there where the wolf and the fox and the Shiba Inu and they all sort of come back. So if you've been to that ark, you know, how did God fit all those animals on the ark? Well, what's the answer to that question? How did God fit 150 dog breeds under the ark? And then how many cat breeds? There wasn't. What? Happily. Yeah. What was on the ark?
One kind.
The kind. The initial kind. Yeah.
Actually 7.
Is it 7?
Then you
Yeah.
read it and then it's like there's 7 of them. Yeah, it gets confusing.
Right.
When you're reading it out of the Bible to children and you're like, wait a minute, everybody says there's 2, a male and a female, 2 by 2, but then there's something about 7.
For the sacrifice, the clean and the unclean.
Yeah.
So that's the creation perspective. The evolutionary biology. So this perspective explains that evolution doesn't occur by a living animal suddenly changing into another group or crossing with a different family. Instead, it happens through common descent. Canines and non-canines, like felines or bears, cannot crossbreed today because their lineage is split from a single ancestral mammal group millions of years ago, accumulating too many genetic differences over time to remain compatible. So what does that say in English?
Marry your cousin.
Just go marry your cousin. So if you go back far enough, right, millions and millions and millions, which that can't be proven, right, but you gotta have the theory. If you go back far enough, there was a time where there was this initial whatever kind of living creature but now we've come so far and now you can't cross because over millions of years it's not possible anymore. That seems more complicated than the Genesis account, if you ask me. That's just a lot of, this is kind of how we think it happened. It must be this way because it can't certainly be creation. So what can we say in the smart textbooks to make us disprove that? At least the more I've studied evolution, the more it's like, that sounds more, it takes more faith to believe evolution than it does creation at the end of the day. So Gregor Mendel was a monk and he was studying pea plants. Okay. So this is from an article in 1980, Genetics and God's Natural Selection. It was a summer's day in a monastery in Czechoslovakia 100 years ago. Most of the monks saw nothing special about pea plants growing there. To one of them, however, they were of great interest because he was performing scientific experiments with them. What particularly fascinated Gregor Mendel was the way in which plants handed on their characteristics to the next generation. What would happen if I crossed a white-flowered plant with a red-flowered? Would the next generation have red flowers or white? What if I did a tall with a short? What height would the offspring be? So as he performed these experiments and analyzed the results, he realized he discovered some fundamental laws concerning inheritance. He was excited. He published his findings in a scientific journal, but the scientific world ignored his work completely. So discouraged, he abandoned the research. When he died in 1884, he had no idea that 20 years later he'd become world famous as a founder of a new science. His work is now regarded as the beginning of the science of genetics, the study of inheritance. In the preceding chapters we've looked at, we must consider whether, as it's generally claimed, the findings of genetics support evolution. Published his findings in the late 1860s, at the time when Darwin's theory was becoming popular. Published in a reputable journal, his paper was widely circulated and known about, Yet it wasn't until 1900 that the work was rediscovered and its importance realized. Why were they ignored? The answer certainly is that they conflicted with Darwin's theory of evolution. It's seldom admitted today, yet still true that what Mendel discovered disproved one of Darwin's most important assumptions, demonstrated by the fact that after Mendel's work was rediscovered, Darwinian evolution suffered a temporary eclipse. After a while, evolutionary thinking reemerged in a slightly different form, which was said to be consistent with Mendel's genetics. What did he discover that spoke against evolution? It can be answered by considering what he did. He crossed various races of edible peas. When a red flowered plant was crossed with a white flowered, the offspring were found to be red flowered. He crossed those red offspring with each other and found they produce offspring of their own in the ratio of 3 reds to 1 white. Pull up they're called the Punnett square. Is that the Punnet? It's the whole thing about dominant and recessive genes.
We burned my favorite.
I think it's the Punnett square, yeah. So I didn't listen greatly in biology class, but maybe you remember something like this. And so let's say there's dad on the top and mom on the left, and I don't know, eye color, maybe use eye color, right?
These are our children.
What's that, Lisa?
This is our children.
So you can
Our children are, one's dominant and one's recessive.
talk to me then, Lisa. What's that saying up there? Explain the Punnett square to us.
Well, with Fred and I being dark-haired and dark-eyed, and to have a child that's blondish red hair and blue eyes, she got recessive genes.
So
She's the little
Adriana
R,
is
little
bottom
R.
right there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Both of you have that little R.
right.
And if you keep having kids, there's a 75% chance that they're going to turn out like Abigail.
Yeah.
But there's a 25% chance that one's going to be like Adriana.
Right.
Because you both have that recessive gene. Anytime there's a capital R, when you make the new DNA, that dominant is always going to win. That's always going to be the one. But when there's that one, you get the recessive. Right? You turned out okay. A little recessive, but you turned out okay. So the recessive gene, it's there. It just was kind of, I don't know if you want to call hiding, but it was there.
It just didn't have enough. It
Yeah.
didn't have enough of it.
So keep that up there, back to those. So there's the 3 and 1, right, the ratio. We can best understand this by considering the genes involved in these crosses. Now we're talking about flowers and pea plants, not humans, but same concept. A gene can be considered as a unit which determines a particular characteristic. In this case, it was flower color. It can exist in one of 2 forms, one giving rise to red, the other to white. The offspring of the original cross of red flowered plants with white were all red flowered, although they did in fact possess a gene for red and a gene for white. So there, he concluded the red must be dominant. Any plant that possessed them both would be red. When the red plants were bred with each other, it was possible for 2 white genes to come together and give offspring that were white. That's your Adriana in this story. Most of them will turn out like Abigail, but 25% of the time you're going to have an Adriana. So that chart there is just kind of in a more complicated way, saying what we just talked about. To the bottom of the Mendel found that when he interbred the red flowered plants obtained as the offspring of his original cross, he got white as well as red. Darwin's theory rested on the assumption that in such a case as this, the white characteristic was a new character acquired by the young plants, which their parents had not possessed. They said, well, that was never there to start. Now it came along later.
How was that?
That would be the question. How did it suddenly appear?
Just
right?
because.
Yeah.
Okay,
A race has to acquire a new characteristic that's ever going to evolve. So the evolutionists would say, well, it just has to happen that way if it's going to evolve. That's just the way it is.
God made it, yeah?
Right. So before I was telling, Fred, talk to me about like plants and how oaks and genus and species and how does that sort of, to this topic, help her?
A lot of times plants within the same genus can interbreed with each other, but you can't, like I'm a tree person, so a maple's not gonna interbreed with an oak, right? But a red oak and a black oak can interbreed and you can come up with something that's in between. So I mean, it's You're not gonna breed an oak with a tulip. I mean,
That would be fun.
so,
Yeah.
you know, this,
Or a cat with a dog, or a rhinoceros with a giraffe, or,
but in a sense, I mean, they won't go so far as to say this, that's what evolution is saying, is that at some point you have to enter, you know, something has to jump and do this insanely illogical thing for evolution to happen. And that's where it's said for a long time. If you believe in evolution, you have more faith than a Christian has in creationism. Because you have to just accept that there's things we don't know. Well, isn't that kind of Christianity? Is there's things that God gave us to understand, and things that He said, well, you don't need to understand that because it's not important.
and, correct me if I'm wrong, but what, the definition of science, what's the definition of science? How is something science? Is that you have to be able to like test it, and there's the whole like scientific theory
You want to
of,
get me going on that one?
That's all it's that.
yeah, eventually your theories turn into laws, and
Right.
eventually you've done it enough and okay, now we have the law of gravity or whatever the law may be. And last I checked, evolution's still a theory, right? But it's kind of accepted as law
I think, and it's just like the,
because it can't be proven.
Big Bang Theory and stuff like that, they've made it law, but yeah, they've accepted it as law, but you can't recreate those circumstances, so how can it be law? So it goes against their whole basis.
It's not science.
Drives me crazy.
Yeah. Science book is telling you things are laws that aren't laws because it can't be proven according to science, and yet it's accepted as a law.
Well, the same with the scientific theory, like, didn't realize this going through school, you know, but scientific theory is flawed from the beginning, or the scientific method is flawed from the beginning because one of the first things you do is make a hypothesis. Well, now you've entered a bias
Sure.
into everything that you do. Why can't it just be, I want to know the answer to this question, and I'm not going to give what I think it's going to be,
Yeah.
because everything I do is going to push me towards getting that correct answer, because you don't want to be wrong. And so that whole system is flawed, because why would I make this prediction, this hypothesis about what the outcome is going to be, instead of just figuring it out?
You're not a
Just
neutral
answering the
party,
question.
yeah. I won't
So-
get my funding unless I have this agenda where I get my funding from. So I don't know, thoughts on this, comments? So the point of this was according to its kind. And right here with the trees and the plants and according to its kind. When we get to the animals, according to its kind. According to its kind. That's going to come up a lot here in Genesis 1. So I forget how many, back to when you're on that Ark encounter, it was interesting, you know, what was the original kind that made, pick a genus or a species or whatever, what was the original kind that made all the dog-like things that we see today? The original kind that made all, so when we get to later on in day 6, there was the creepy crawly things, that's one of the words in Hebrew. There's the beasts of the earth, that's kind of like the donkeys and things like that. Then there's the wild animals. There's a different kind. I thought it was fascinating. I thought they did a nice job. Again, it goes beyond what Scripture really says, but it certainly makes sense. I mean, it could very well have been that. And that answers the question, how did all those animals fit on the ark? Well, there weren't that many.
That guy that we saw dressed up like a fox walking in the Metro Market the other week.
Dressed up like a fox,
Yeah,
okay?
he had the tail, the
Wild bird
ears,
sighting.
and I got video of him walking in with the tail wagging and stuff, but, so he wasn't really a fox.
He wasn't really a fox. Very confused, Homo sapiens.
That's what he knew it.
So at the end of the day, outside of evolution, it just goes against Scripture. But what is the, I guess, spiritual significance of some? Well, you know, can't we just believe evolution and the Bible at the same time? Can we have it both ways? What is the ultimate spiritual, I guess, consequence of that?
If you don't believe that this is the absolute truth, then what else are you gonna question?
So there'd be one. Once you start throwing out Genesis 1 and 2, what else are you gonna, if that can't happen, what else can't happen? What
The
else?
idea of evolution is created by man.
Okay, man, completely created by man. How about the redemptive consequences? What's that, what is it?
At the end of the day, if you go down this road of holding on to evolution, you take away everything what Jesus did.
What Jesus did, yeah.
It becomes a moot point. Man created us both, and then how do we then get to heaven? We have to then trust into ourselves. And I'll tell you what, I'm not so good at keeping things straight sometimes.
But maybe that's the most important one of all. Not, certainly the other ones are important too, and once you start tearing this page out, what are you gonna, but maybe at the heart of it all is the purpose of Genesis is to show us the purpose of creation. Here's what God made for man, here's how man screwed it up, here's what God did to fix it. And evolution sort of doesn't care, right? Because man is just the top, and they're always getting better. And man has no need for a savior, man has no need for salvation, man is just continually getting higher and higher and higher and higher. Where Genesis 1, 2, and 3 says man was meant to be the top, and then man threw that all away, and then God in Christ restored them to their status, renewed in the image of its creator. And evolution could care less about that discussion. It has no need for redemption and forgiveness. It's just man's continuing rise to becoming more and more dominant.
Well, when man becomes where they think they are the top, God knocks them down a couple pegs.
Tower of Babel doesn't
One
take
with
real
the
long,
flood,
right?
flood, and
Yeah.
then the next one with the Tower of Babel. So like, when you get too high and mighty on yourself, he's gonna bring you back down.
Right.
And sometimes that's the whole world.
And you're saying that the purpose of the creation is to
Yeah, doesn't he have he has the 6
that
steps or whatever?
Genesis has to be accepted.
Yeah, kind of and it ends with Christ and then the restoration at the end of time, the new heavens and new earth. Yeah, no, I've enjoyed my couple visits there. It was fascinating stuff. Anything else on day 3? Didn't think you'd be getting a genetics lesson today, but there you go. You never know what surprises you'll find.
You kind of brought up the chicken and the egg, which we can get to later, but I think that we have our answer in Genesis. The chicken. Or the tree or whatever, that
Yeah.
came first. He made them so that they could make more of themselves.
Right.
He didn't make the baby thing, the
He
seed.
actually made
He made
trees,
the
he
tree.
didn't plant
Yeah.
a seed,
A
Right.
mature tree.
Right.
a mature tree.
Yeah.
I said, Gregor Mendel, descent from generation to generation is orderly rather than disorderly. What you said, Fred, variations within a species result from different combinations of materials already within the species. And nothing new is ever added. New forms are only old forms that have come to light. Which is kind of the point we made, yeah. Well, that's all I got for you for today.
I think at one of those, was it the Creation Museum or at the Art? They have I wanna say it's called a Zorse. I think they crossed a zebra and a horse.
Oh, yes, I think that's right, yes.
So,
Yeah. Which could totally happen because they're of the same kind.
Donkey is a cross.
What's that?
I mean, isn't it the donkey that's a cross between a horse and something? A donkey? A mule is a cross between a horse and a donkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look
A
at something
mule
like,
cannot reproduce.
right. Interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah,
So a mule's between a horse and a donkey, but a mule can't reproduce.
Mule can't reproduce.
They're a little too closely related.
Too closely related.
and then there's also, I think, a liger.
Yeah.
A liger, a lion
Come
and a
near
tiger.
your cousin or your brother.
Yeah, you look at some of those African mammals that we don't talk about real often, there's some pretty wild looking things out there. Yeah, the Dick and the wildebeest and there's some of the big horns coming out of their heads. Go on a safari and see some of those crazy things.
Dogs, too.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated, just because we got a couple minutes, you watch like the Westminster Dog Show. You just go, wow, over time. So there's one of them is called the Canaan Dog. I forget what group it's in, but I think it's still called the Canaan Dog. Like we think of Canaan, right? The Canaanites. And the Canaan Dog kind of just looks like a regular old dog. I think of the dog in the Texan Act, probably looks like a Canaan dog, right? And then you watch like the poodle walk by. Looks a lot different than a Canaan dog, right? So, but somewhere along the line, I don't know how a poodle became a poodle, if they all came from like that Canaan dog or one of those medieval dog species, but then some of the weird, one has a black tongue, right? What's the big one with the black tongue? I forget, or a blue tongue.
You're not listening, you're like the dog lady.
What's the dog with the blue tongue? It's a big
Dog.
black dog and it has a blue tongue. What are some other? Then there's the hairless ones, right? The Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Well, even when you look at Chihuahuas.
Chihuahuas have a tail.
Yeah, those things.
Okay.
You got the long-haired ones and the short-haired ones and the curly ones and the hairless ones.
Labradoodle.
Chow Chow has a black one.
More contemporary.
Yeah, and then you have the herding group, and they all kind of do their herding thing. And then you have the terrier group, and they're all the little guys. They
all chase mailmen.
All yip at the mailman, yeah.
But then you got the humongous ones, like the Newfoundlands or the Great Danes.
That's it. The Newfoundland, I think, has the purple.
It's just like, they're huge compared to the Chihuahuas,
So the wonder of God. So in a sense, can you say the word evolution and be correct that evolution happened? In a sense.
Yeah.
How do you get all those dogs from dog?
Right.
In a sense, it has evolved to what we see today.
Right.
Just not the theory of evolution is how it evolved. Abigail, were you going to say something? Oh, the Chow Chow. Okay, thank you. Chow Chow. All right. Well, if nothing else, I haven't heard anything more from the Glocks about their grandson. He's got to be, that's how old's Gretchen? She's got to be in her 40s. Yeah, she's probably my age, I would guess.
So we're not talking like a 3-year-old.
No.
Like a teenager.
Yeah, at least a teenager, if not.
What happened then? What happened?
Just said he had a fall. A very bad fall. Various broken bones and head injury.
Must have been high.
Well, then how is that hunter that was injured in, was it a tornado or something?
Oh, from the Menasha
No,
tornado,
yeah.
Hunter was released. Let me pull that email up here.
I saw that last one was released, but they didn't want to start therapy or something?
Yeah, that's the last I heard. So they released him on, I got this on the 9th, so whatever, that would have been the 8th. He started therapy on Friday. I realized it was too soon, so they're going to hold off on it. That's the last I heard. As far as I've heard, it still hasn't been any casualties from that tornado. Pretty crazy.
That's amazing.
All right, well, close with the blessing and the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be